Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, July 28th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, fellow with Type Investigations, Sarah Posner, on her book Unholy, Why White Evangelicals Worship at the Altar of Donald Trump. Also on the program today, the Republicans in the Senate announce its stimulus package, and it is twisted. Meanwhile, Bill Barr, sitting in a Congressional Judiciary Committee hearing as we speak, defiantly, I should say. Texas COVID deaths spike as they finally start counting all of them. Democrats lead in Senate swing state races across the country. And Andrew Cuomo does a solid for Senate Republicans by writing word for word their corporate immunity law. In Georgia, David Perdue successfully puts John Ossoff's Judaism in play. More federal police sent to Portland. And the Democratic Party platform rejects Medicare for all and pot legalization because. And after less than a week of baseball, 11 members of the 40-man roster Marlins are infected with COVID. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Matt is back with us today. I said this yesterday, and this will probably be the last day I start off the show this way, but things are going to be weird for a while, and we're going to work through it. I imagine we're still going to hear plenty from folks who want to remember Michael when they call into the show, and that's okay. It's just going to take some time. We are moving ahead with our plans on Thursdays, at least for the month of August. Starting with this Thursday, we're going to play some interviews from Michael Thursdays and maybe Matt and Michael Mondays in the first half of the program. And then we'll do, we'll have a fun half that will be more current. And we're going to try that for a month or so. Just to remind folks of some of the stuff that maybe they missed. Maybe you recently joined or whatnot. And that will be a fun and probably a little sad for folks. But that's what we're going to do with it. And, we will get to a point where things are, feel not so weird, but that's going to take time. And so that's the way we're going to do it. We don't really have any other choice, frankly. It is the cards we've been dealt, and that's what we got to play. So that's what we will do on the program. Thank you for being here. And again, thank you for all the notes, and thank you. We've had people email in with suggestions as to what we should play on those Thursdays. If you want to, if there's an interview that you particularly remember that Michael did, on a Thursday or a Monday, or maybe a random other day, but on this show, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com and just put in the subject line for Michael, and we will go through those. And like I say, we're going to be playing them on Thursdays, at least for the next month or so. And that's that. We have some other things that we're working on, but we're all just sort of like trying to work our way back to functioning better. So that's what we'll do. In the meantime, we've got a clip. I don't have my sound sheet for me. I got to get my kid to bring it in if I can get them to. But this, you'll recall that I guess this was 2 years ago now at Politicon. Year and a half, I don't remember. I had the opportunity to debate Charlie Kirk. And there's been an interesting story that's out by ProPublica about Turning Points USA and some discrepancies or some questions that people have about their tax status and about how much money Charlie Kirk is getting paid. And maybe I'll save that for tomorrow because it's a funny story, because that came up right before our debate, actually. But Charlie Kirk is a guy who's been running this organization that ostensibly is for college students. But really it's one of those things where it's for old people who are on the right and want to think that they're influencing college students.
Whose grandkids are in college.
Whose grandkids might be in college. And probably they're mad. Like, Jenny came home and was talking about Black Lives Mattering. That type of thing. Where can I pour money in?
Black Lives Matter counterpoint.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the way the guy has made a considerable amount of money and made big inroads. He's very close with Donald Trump and the Trump crew of people. And here is Charlie Kirk. Now, I don't know. Does he have a show that is on? Is that what it's called? The Charlie Kirk Show?
That's what it looks like.
Ooh, I guess he's rolling that out.
New to me.
Okay. And
so you gotta come in, first episode, you got to come in with the top of your game.
Exactly.
Roll out and everything.
Exactly. And I have my sound sheet here. My assistant brought it in. Actually, I don't have it. No, I hadn't printed it out yet. So let's get to that. This is a clip from the Charlie Kirk show.
Do not force me to wear a mask. It's that simple. I'm not going to do it. I'm not. The only time I comply is on the airlines because I actually need to fly the airlines to be able to do my job and travel the country so I can deliver truth to you and make an income and grow Turning Point USA. So that's the fight I do not fight. But every single time I go into one of these grocery stores, where's your mask? I say, well, first of all, the science around masks is very questionable. Very questionable. In fact, some doctors think that masks actually make you sicker and have you less likely to be able to get oxygen and more likely to infect yourself and less likely to be able to fight the virus and actually more likely.
Pause it. Let me just make something absolutely clear. There is no reputable doctor in the country who believes that wearing a mask makes you more likely to get infected. There was early on when the medical community thought that the primary way one gets infected is by touching an infected area and going to your face. And there was some concern that people would be fidgeting with their masks. There is no reputable doctor, researcher in the country, maybe in the world, who believes that masks undercut your ability to get oxygen. That's absurd. All you need to do is watch a fictional television show, and you will see all of these doctors when they go into surgery and they're wearing masks. And why are they wearing masks? Because they don't want the stuff inside them to get inside the body. They don't want their germs to be projected out. And again, I'll remind you, this notion, like you see these people with taking a CO2 meter and putting it in their mask and going, look at the CO2 reading. The difference in size between a molecule of CO2 or a molecule of the coronavirus is like the equivalent to I don't know, this may be actually even understating it, a golf ball to a massive beach ball. CO2 will go through the fibers of any mask that you're wearing, unless it's a plastic bag over your head. Whereas the coronavirus, much less likely to make it through because it's much, much larger. I think we got some response last time. I think it's like 1,000 times bigger. Still very tiny to the naked eye. But let's just roll that out there. But go ahead.
Oxygen and more likely to infect yourself and less likely to be able to fight the virus and actually more likely to be able to die sooner. A lot of people believe that. I've met many doctors that hold that view. Secondly, we have a huge civil liberty issue here. Why do you have the authority to tell me what I can and cannot do with my body? I thought it was my body, my choice. I thought that was the entire thought process as to why we are wrongly able to terminate 1 million children in the womb every single year. And so I just don't like being told.
Let's see. What, and I maybe I've missed in the video. Maybe Charlie's put it out there. But no shoes, no shirt, no service in a restaurant. I mean, are we really? Is he really going to complain about that as well? Why do you get There's a big difference between the government telling you what to do and a business telling you what to do. Now, it is the case that in public, in some areas where there is a mandatory mask requirement, but there is a large body of, and it has been supported by the Supreme Court, actually, even in the context of religious organizations. We have a concept in this country that rights can be abridged if there is a compelling government reason to do so. And the government has found that it's a compelling reason to do so because it's in the name of public safety. It's a little bit different. There is no public safety questions when it comes to the right of a woman to get an abortion. But continue.
Able to terminate 1 million children in the womb every single year. And so I just don't like being told what to do generally by the federal government. I'm not a type of person who plays well when the government comes in and starts to say you must put this on your face. Now, I think there's some restrictions that I support. I'm actually in the minority. I support seatbelt laws.
Pause it 1 second. There is no federal mandate, incidentally, to wear a mask. There's never been a question of one. We would like one, maybe, but there isn't one at all. Not at all. And in fact, if he has a problem with the federal government doing it, then it would make sense that he would have no problem if the city did it, in which case he'd have a problem with the states that have denied cities the opportunity, like in Georgia, to require face masks. But go.
I'm actually in the minority. I support seatbelt laws because I think seatbelts actually save lives. And I actually think it's not that big of an infringement on your liberty. I kind of disagree with a lot of people on this. I mean, some super strict libertarians say, oh, no seatbelts ever. Okay. If you fly through the window of a car because you didn't want to wear a seatbelt and all of a sudden I have to pay for your health care, that's ridiculous. A mask might not even work. A mask is questionable at best. So the science around masks needs to be debated more. And the fact that these Republican governors are like, oh, you must wear a mask. You must wear a mask. I think it's nonsense. And I don't think it's popular. I have never met anyone that says, I just love wearing my mask. I love it. Yeah, I mean, okay. I am not a fan. I think it's dehumanizing. When I see a 4-year-old wearing a mask, I can't think but help. We have let them down, and we have robbed them of their childhood.
Well, I mean, in a way.
Yes, by making sure that their parents don't die. So let me get this straight. What about the concept of you get COVID and our healthcare system has to pay for it? We have 100 and nearly 50,000 dead I don't even know how many more have been hospitalized for extended periods of time than that. Is it a measure 4 times, 5 times that more? It's the exact same dynamic. It's the exact same dynamic, except there is actually more of an argument that your inhibition or your refusal to wear a mask harms other people in the community more than you not wearing your seatbelt. There's a far more compelling argument that the state needs to step in and tell you to wear a mask. And the idea that there's even a shred of science that says wearing a mask makes it more likely you will catch COVID or is more dangerous is absurd.
I did some research on the Charlie Kirk show, so it's been around as a podcast since last summer, at least. But they recently did a pivot to video about a month ago. So I would just welcome. They got about 75,000 followers. I would just encourage our watchers to go welcome him to YouTube.
Absolutely. And here's the question I want to know. Now that we're seeing him in all his glory, why is his hair so long? I mean, why isn't he getting a haircut? The dude would go on an airplane without a mask if they would let him. Why doesn't he go get a haircut somewhere? He's so full of crap. It's unbelievable. And that's the beauty of what he's doing there. You can sort of like start to see the seams a little bit. Like, I want to show you that I am not in bed with the Republicans. I think it's ridiculous that there are some Republican governors calling for masks. And yes, I think I'd say the one accurate thing is that I've yet to meet somebody who says, I love my mask.
Yeah. Also, it's funny to go back and look when he was a Ted Cruz fan in the 2016 Republican primary and was really aghast at some of Donald Trump's antics, and look at where he is now. Kind of the reverse maturity. I'll
tell you where he is now. He is making apparently at least $300,000 a year. That's where he is now. That's not maturity. Bad. As a 26-year-old. That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
He looks older than that, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's me. I think that's what's behind the hair. He's trying to keep his youthful, buoyance.
That's very possible. It's very possible. It also could be possible that he's actually genuinely afraid of getting COVID. And the one place he would be seen in public would be on an airline. And he knows he's got to make up an excuse for why he's wearing it, because he's not a total idiot.
Because if he gets COVID, we'll do a video about it.
If he gets COVID, we will do a video about it.
Yeah.
I've got an interesting piece here but I will get to that later, of a guy who had a very similar idea about COVID as Charlie Kirk, but we'll get to that soon. I mentioned it's going to be weird when we do ads a little bit in this with everything that's been going on, but the reality is this morning for breakfast, I had some Magic Spoon. I didn't realize that we'd be reading an ad from them today, but this episode brought to you by Magic Spoon. As you recall, breakfast cereal, one of the best parts of being a kid. Why? Because in some instances, maybe your folks didn't spend a lot of time making breakfast, so they weren't so good at it. But also, who doesn't want like a bowl of like sweet chocolatey goodness in the morning? As an adult, you realize I'm not going to feed my kids cereals like that. I'm not going to eat cereals like that. It's full of sugar, full of junk. Magic Spoon is a new cereal company that's discovered a way to recreate your favorite childhood cereals with, you ready for this? 0 sugar. And with 11 grams of protein, only 3 net grams of carbs in each serving. Magic Spoon offers 4 flavors based on all-time classics: cocoa, fruity, frosted, and blueberry, plus a variety pack that lets you try them all. They've recreated the taste and the texture of classic sugary cereal, but it tastes so incredible, you'd never guess it was healthy. It's keto-friendly, it's gluten-free, it's grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, GMO-free. My kids love this stuff. My favorite flavor of these 4, not supposed to say anything about the other ones, but I got to say, I like the other ones too. My favorite of these 4 is the chocolate, cocoa. It's delicious. My kids love the fruity. They love the frosted. And we mix it in with the blueberry every now and then for a change up. But they're delicious, and you eat it and you realize, like, I'm not eating the same junk that it tastes like I'm eating. It's delicious. Go to magicspoon.com/majority report, grab a variety pack, try it today. Use the promo code majority report at checkout. You get free shipping. Magic Spoon, so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. That's magicspoon.com/majority report, code majority report for free shipping. I had some this very morning. I kid you not. All right, going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to a fellow with Type Investigations, Sarah Posner, on her book, Unholy, Why White Evangelicals Worship at the Altar of Donald Trump. And I should say, Charlie Kirk, one of those guys. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome, I believe, back to the program. I mean, I know that we've talked in the past many times, I have a feeling. Reporting fellow with Type Investigations and author of Unholy, Why White Evangelicals Worship at the Altar of Donald Trump. Sarah Posner, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Sam.
I feel like, right now I can't remember anything, but I know we had you on for your last book, I believe, and also countless stories over the years. And you have been reporting on evangelicals and the Christian and Christian movement, I guess, in this country for, I think, like 15 years. I mean, as long as I can remember.
A long time.
And so let's just start with this. When we say white evangelicals, who are we talking about? Like what, like give us a sense of who these people are, because I think your reporting certainly over the past couple of years has exposed that they're not necessarily who we would think they are, at least in terms of the way that they practice their lives. Let's put it that way.
Well, white evangelicals make up a big chunk of the Republican Party base, and they are also a crucial part of what's known as the religious right or the Christian right, which is also an alliance with right-wing Catholics and conservative mainline Protestants. But white evangelicals are the driving force of the religious right and of Trump's presidency. And so this is people who largely attend evangelical churches, Pentecostal churches, charismatic churches. These might be churches that are affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention or a non-denominational church that practices faith healing, or a non-denominational church that promotes the prosperity gospel. So it's not one single theological unit, but they share a common theological belief that they're born again in Jesus Christ, and they have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And more than any other religious demographic, they're very politically homogenous. 81% of them voted for Donald Trump in 2016.
How often do they go to church? I mean, how pious? I mean, I identify as a Jew, but I don't. But there's a huge difference in my worldview than, let's say, maybe a Jew who lives in a Hasidic community, in a different part of Brooklyn. What, like, how pious, how practicing are they? They belong to these churches. Are they? I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of, because I think I saw one study back where folks would identify as being evangelical Christians, but then also like, I don't really go to church though.
Right. I think the thing that's important to understand is that churches obviously play a really important role in evangelicals' lives, but in terms of their political identity or their political ideology, it's way more than church, right? So there's church where they might go once a week or maybe even less often. But then maybe there's also the Wednesday night Bible study, or the televangelists that they like watching on TV, or conferences that they like to go to, the newsletters they get from the Family Research Council or the Faith and Freedom Coalition, or any number of political groups, or the Facebook pages that they subscribe to. So it's not just church itself, but it's a wider cultural and political community that reinforces a lot of the political beliefs and ideology. And in the Trump era, conspiracy theories and, claims about who Trump is and who Trump's enemies are, for example.
Right, and I want to get into that, but we need to understand white evangelicals as much as a cultural group as it is a religious group in that sense, right? I mean, it's a culture that is built around a religion, but it is a culture in the sense that they're getting their media, their music, their socializing, their how-tos on raising kids, and their education. All of these things are they're all sort of like, they're all culturally consistent.
Right, and culturally connected. So you could go to a conference where you would meet people from all over the country who might be familiar with each other's pastors or each other's quote unquote teachers, because they have a very robust media ecosystem where various teachers or pastors are broadcast all over the country. So you're not just learning from or getting cultural or theological reinforcement from your own pastor, but it's a wider circle of ideas and media and ideology.
Is it safe to say that Donald Trump was not immersed in this culture at any point in his life?
Well, he was immersed in a certain aspect of this culture, which is very important to their political organizing, and that is televangelism. So the story about Trump goes that, he went to Norman Vincent Peale's church when he was a kid. Of course, Norman Vincent Peale is famous for the power of positive thinking, but probably more importantly for Trump's political organizing, he became interested in the televangelist Paula White in the early to mid 2000s. And the story that Trump's friends and allies like to tell is that he likes to channel surf. He likes to channel surf to Christian television. And he saw Paula White on her television show and he wanted to meet her, and he had his secretary call her up, and he brought her to Trump Tower, and they've been friends ever since. And she's now considered to be his top spiritual advisor, and she even has an official advisor role in the White House to his faith-based initiative. So he was not necessarily immersed in going to church, but he was very immersed in this prosperity gospel culture where they teach that God wants you to be rich, and a sign of God's blessing is that you are rich. God wants you to be healthy, but only those who have faith in God are going to be healthy and have the ability to heal themselves or experience miraculous healing or miraculous riches. And so to the extent that he was immersed in that world, that was what first connected him to the Christian right.
Do we have a sense of what it was about when he's watching, like, what's he looking for when he's doing that? I mean, he's doing, I imagine he had political aspirations back then, but I don't know. I mean, do you think that's what he was doing, or was it just like he was looking at this like, this could be a potential business for me, or maybe he wants to learn how do you do like direct marketing? I mean, what?
It's hard to tell. The way the story was conveyed to me by Johnny Moore, who's also one of Trump's religious advisors, evangelical advisors, was that Trump was just channel surfing, and he happened on Paula White, and she was giving a sermon on what was called, the title of it was The Value of Vision, and that it had a lot to do with being able to have a vision for your business life or your business success. And this is what appealed to him as a businessman, that there was some connection between believing in the Bible or something you could find in the Bible and having a successful business. He may have had other motivations as well that I don't know about, but that was the way the story was conveyed to me.
Fair enough. And so, okay, so he has at least a sense of like of what's going on some of the communications wing of this. So how does he go? Well, he is considered by some of these folks, and I mean, largely this is a story of hypocrisy, but I'm not 100% sure if that's the case. Like, I get the transactional stuff, and we'll get to that, right? I mean, that to me, it makes total sense. But there are people in this community who, it appears, genuinely believe that he is chosen by God to deliver for them. And will you go into that and the sort of like the idea of, and I guess maybe this speaks to sort of like what some people would call an authoritarianism streak within religious followers, but the idea of a strong man.
Right. So the Christian right believes that God intended for America to be founded America, played a role in founding America as a Christian nation, and that America's Christian heritage has been under attack by secularism, by feminism, by social justice warriors, by political correctness, by socialism, right? So like they have I'm sorry?
Me.
By you.
Yes, folks like me. Yes.
And so the through line of my book, which is about how the Christian right came to mobilize around Donald Trump alongside the alt-right, and that a lot of this had to do with race as well as religion, right? But a through line of the book is that they don't like a liberal democracy. They don't like a pluralistic, secular democracy. And so Trump comes along and he is willing to cast aspersions on all of their bogeyman that they've been developing over the past several decades. He's willing to claim on their behalf that their religious freedom is under siege, and he's going to save their religious freedom from all of these terrible forces that are infringing on it. And so even though Trump doesn't have any particular history with opposing abortion or even opposing LGBTQ rights before he starts running for president, they come to accept him and embrace him as this savior who is going to use illiberal or undemocratic means to achieve their vision for America that they think has been lost to all of these terrible liberal forces.
And what amazes me that you write about in this is that there's this real sense that they who come to that conclusion are the congregants, right? Like that largely the leadership of white evangelicals across the board, they were sort of following their congregations.
So there were a few people, well-known people who got on board early with Trump. People will probably remember Robert Jeffress, well, Paula White, obviously, because she had been on board with him for a while. And Robert Jeffress, who's now one of his top religious advisors. He's a megachurch pastor from Dallas. He endorsed Trump fairly early. And then there was a lot of attention on Jerry Falwell Jr., who endorsed Trump right before the primaries got underway. But largely the leadership was headed towards somebody like Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or even Ben Carson. But what they found was the grassroots was loving Trump, and Trump, in this crowded field of people with a lot of evangelical cred, like Cruz and Rubio and Scott Walker and a host of other people in that huge field, Trump was getting a plurality of evangelical support, according to polling. And so once it became obvious that Trump was just steamrolling over these other candidates and that the grassroots was really mobilized behind him, more of the leadership started to fall into line.
All right, so let's talk about the mechanics. Well, let's get to, I guess, like what the grievances that you write about that bind these folks. I'm trying to get to, like, what it is about Trump that that even the congregation responded to, right? I mean, they're not the ones who are going to be convinced or are sitting in a room where Trump is, transactionally saying, like, look, this is what I'm going to deliver for you. I don't know if it's going to be a wad of cash or whatever it is, but or just, religious freedom, executive orders or whatever it is. What is it? What is it that binds these folks? Like, what was it that Trump was saying that was basically making white evangelicals feel like this is a guy who may not have walked the walk, but he is going to protect our interests? I mean, what were those interests?
So first of all, abortion has become a top issue for them. And so you're right, to a certain extent, this was transactional. He promised judges or Supreme Court justices who would overturn Roe versus Wade. That was a big deal.
But every Republican does. I mean, more or less, right? Maybe he does it a little bit more explicitly, but they all more or less do that.
Right. So, but that's an important deal sealer. But I think more crucially for the base was Trump's way of speaking, right? His way of articulating grievances about, when you think about the early stages of his campaign, when he was running in the primary, he had grievances about Black Lives Matter. He had grievances about immigrants. He had grievances about political correctness in general, or globalists, or just this litany of what is perceived by the base to be liberal ideas or scapegoats that they have come to believe has changed that Christian America that they believe God intended the country to be. And so they see Trump as coming in and just being what some of them call a wrecking ball or a disruptor, and that he's unafraid to just smash it all to bits so that there can be this revitalization of the Christian America that God intended. And so a lot of this has to do with their perception of, say, church-state separation as an infringement of their religious freedom, or marriage equality as necessarily an infringement of their religious freedom. So to the extent that civil rights for other people are seen as a, there's like to them a push-pull or an equal and opposite reaction, where those rights necessarily mean an infringement of their rights as Christians. Trump was articulating that in a way that didn't soft pedal it at all, didn't bend to what they thought was political correctness or bipartisanship. And that was very appealing, to have this staunch warrior on their behalf.
To what extent have we seen a change in the numbers of the people that voted for Trump? In other words, like, I'm trying to get a sense of how much of, one of the narratives that we hear now, obviously this cohort, white evangelicals, were key to Trump's victory. It seems to me. Like, he's not able to mobilize these people. Forget it. You can't run as a Republican unless they're going to support you.
Right.
To what extent, like, how large has that demographic, that cohort, where is that in terms of its growth trajectory, A, and B, and I ask that because one of the narratives that came out of his election was that we are having, the life expectancy of white males dropped around that time as a function largely of the opioid problem, but it also was coexisting with a drop in wages and real wages, and small towns and rural areas in particular, and older cities being depleted. And I wonder, where does the material experience of these people come into this? Has their numbers changed as situations have gotten worse for people, like economically and whatnot, or where does that play into it, or was that completely irrelevant in the context? Did they just their voting cues, the things that motivate them, are just completely divorced from that material world?
I think for the most part, yes, they are. But I think the demographic changes that are happening, which are resulting in white evangelicals being a smaller part of the U.S. population overall, have to do with younger people, the 18 to 29-year-olds or the 18 to 40-year-olds being less white and also less religious, right? So that has diminished the percentage of white evangelicals vis-a-vis the rest of the population. However, the really important thing to remember in terms of elections is that they make up about 25% of the electorate, right? So they vote they're very robust voters, and that's in part because of the culture that we talked about at the top, where the church and the televangelists and the political organizations reinforce each other with very robust and effective get out the vote operations. And they make up about, a third of the Republican electorate. So Trump knows this, where, the people around Trump know this, and the religious right political organizations on the ground are working very hard as we speak to mobilize white evangelicals and white conservative Catholics and other Christians to the polls in support of Trump, because of his base, right, they're the sort of most consistent voters and have the most organized get out the vote machinery.
Let's talk about the politicization of these folks and the grounds on which they were politicized. There's the story of, I think it was Weirich meeting with religious leaders in the mid to late 70s as they're trying to figure out, like, what topic can we use? What issue can we use to mobilize folks? And you you have it was abortion, supposedly. You have an amendment to that story, or maybe a revision slightly.
So Paul Weirich was one of the main architects of the religious right. He came to Washington in the late 1960s. He helped build this movement called the New Right, which, it was new at the time, right? And he was trying to organize a coalition of conservatives who rejected what you might sort of shorthandedly call country club conservatism or country club republicanism. And as part of that, he believed that he really needed to bring in religious voters, that they were going to be a really important part of this kind of middle America white coalition of voters that was going to remake the Republican Party. And he was a very right-wing Catholic. And so he had all along been opposed to abortion, but he could not get these evangelicals and fundamentalists that he was working with excited about the abortion issue in the 1970s. This is in the lead up to the formation of the moral majority in 1979. But by Weirich's own admission and by the historical record, the evangelicals and fundamentalists who got involved with forming the moral majority were animated by something else entirely. And that was the federal government's efforts to desegregate private and private Christian schools in the wake of the school desegregation of public schools that happened after Brown v. Board of Education. And so this idea that the government was infringing on the religious rights of these Christian schools by demanding, according to them, quote unquote, quotas of Black students that needed to go to their Christian schools, that was a great infringement of their religious liberty. And this formed the basis for a lot of the political organizing, even to this day, for the Christian right, where you'll see them invoking Bob Jones University, which was the big, the most well-known of these cases, where Bob Jones University, a fundamentalist college in South Carolina, had its tax exemption revoked because of its racist policies. It had a policy against interracial dating on campus. And it was a Supreme Court case. I mean, they claimed that this was a great violation of their religious freedom. So what you see today, even today, religious right activists will claim that, the IRS is going to take away the tax exemption of churches or nonprofit organizations that oppose same-sex marriage. And so this kind of idea that the government is the enemy of the religious freedom of these Christians pervades the religious right decades later. But the reality is that it was these racial grievances, not abortion, that initially got these activists involved in the moral majority and the other organizations that formed at that time. And it was only later that they sort of got on board with the abortion issue, and that later became their top organizing issue.
There's two things that strike me. One is that there is a sense now, and we just saw Josh Hawley come out with a big litmus test for abortion, that abortion is not just a litmus test for abortion. It is that if you are all in on, as a judge, on limiting the right of a woman to get an abortion, then there is a sense amongst those folks that you line up straight down the line on every other issue that is super important. And so abortion becomes sort of like a talisman on some level. If you cross that threshold, everything else lines up perfectly. And you don't even have to ask about, where they are on corporate rights, or where they are on the rights of let's say, accused criminals, or where they are on a whole host of other issues that are completely unrelated. But that if you line up a hardcore anti-abortion, you're going to be okay on all the other things down the line, at least in the judicial level. And then the other thing that strikes me as you say that is that construction of infringement of religious freedom where we're not going to give you tax, we're not going to give you tax-free status, which is really like, we're just not going to give you this special privilege. That construction is more in play in this era than I think at any other time in between, it seems to me.
Well, it's interesting because it's the right that has made the question of, oh, my tax dollars are funding abortion, or my tax dollars are funding contraception. They've really made that such a key issue for them. The idea that there might be some, there might be some penny or dollar somewhere in Obamacare that's using taxpayer funding for abortion. Yet their complaint about the government enforcement of what is not only stated government policy, but the law, on civil rights and school desegregation and LGBT rights and same-sex marriage, that they think it's okay for the taxpayers to basically be subsidizing their nonprofit organizations despite their opposition to these civil rights for other people. And the other thing that's kind of crazy about all of that is that the IRS has not done this, right? Like nobody has gotten their tax exemption taken away for any of these reasons. And certainly no church has had their tax exempt status taken away because of their opposition to same-sex marriage. So, but yes, I mean, abortion becomes the top litmus test issue, but it's connected with all of these notions about what is their religious freedom and what is the role of the government in enforcing rights for other people when it comes up against what they claim is their religious rights.
To what extent is Mike Pence? What role does he play in this world? Because I've been told that by one of his biographers that Mike Pence is the most powerful is the most powerful theocrat that we have had in this country's history, as he sits as a vice president, as a sitting vice president. Is that your sense? A, and B, like what does Mike Pence do in this world? I mean, is he the one? Because you talk about Health and Human Services as being a very important, sort of a center for a lot of these folks, but you can also see them like Betsy DeVos and sure. Mike Pompeo and just about every other
Bill Barr.
I mean, I don't think people fully realize how religious this administration is. Is Mike Pence the guy who's basically saying like, this guy hits, both your list, Donald Trump, which is he's loyal and, and he's willing to, maybe be, cut a couple corners, and also the religious right, because this guy's dyed in the wool. I mean, what is Pence doing in that administration? So
I think that Pence initially was picked because he had so much cred with the religious right. I mean, dating back to the time before he was a congressman, he had a radio show in Indiana. He was a very respected, admired congressman for the Christian right when he served in Congress and later as governor of Indiana. And so I think originally I thought that he was just going to be like the bridge or the person who gave Trump the imprimatur for the base. But as I've watched him interact with Trump and interact with the base over the course of Trump's presidency, and watching how the Christian right really went to bat for Trump during impeachment, when you might have thought, well, so what if Trump were to get impeached? Because they would have Pence, and Pence is willing to do all of the policy things that Trump is willing to do for them. So what gives here? And I really think that Pence sort of models for them what it's like to submit to Trump. I know that sounds a little bit terrifying and wild, but
and super creepy.
If you watch him, he's very submissive to Trump, and submission to authority, especially divine authority, is very important in this culture. And I think that the role that he's played, especially in the later years of Trump's presidency, has been to show how you are submissive to Trump.
I'm sorry. It's just like so creepy to me, that dynamic. And it really, I guess I'm thinking about those like Dear Leader roundtables they have where they sit around a conference room and everybody goes is like, you are, I mean, it is, it's like this, they're paying tribute, right? I mean, they're it's, one of them's going to bring their firstborn son and slay them on the table right in front of them, I guess.
I think that it's really important to understand that submission to authority and what is perceived as godly authority is playing a role here in terms of how Pence and other members of Trump's cabinet, who may say negative or disparaging things about him in private that, White House reporters get wind of off the record, right? But in public, they're extremely dutiful and submissive to him. And I think that's their reading of the base's view of Trump as this kind of authority or savior figure.
So when we get stuff like Trump is, the comparing, there's a Trump Cyrus the Great coin, which you can buy online. Mm-hmm. Like, are those, who's developing those and putting them out? I'm not saying specifically the coin, although I'd be curious about that. But I mean, who's like, are these developments of these comparisons like serving a similar function as Mike Pence sort of modeling to everybody on, how he is compliant with the alpha?
Well, I think with the Cyrus comparison, that is intended to deflect the argument that Trump isn't a Christian, right? So, like, I think by any measure, by a liberal reading of Christianity or a conservative reading of Christianity, it's hard to argue that Trump is a Christian. And so the Cyrus comparison has been used to say, well, look, sometimes God chooses unlikely leaders to save a nation at a critical point in its history. So in the Bible, King Cyrus was the Persian king who helped the exiled Jews return to Jerusalem and rebuild the Holy City. The analogy there is that God has sent Trump to save America and rebuild a Christian America, even though he seems like an unlikely person for God to choose because he's not of the same religion as the people who are having their nation rebuilt. And so that's where the Cyrus thing came from.
Who developed that?
Like the coins and
I mean, where does that come from? Does that come spontaneously,
I can't remember who the first person to say it was, but it became very popular in charismatic and Pentecostal circles. There's this evangelist, his name is Lance Wallnau. He's promoted it a lot. He's also promoted the wrecking ball theory that, Trump is a wrecking ball. He's going to come and destroy everything because everything just needs to be ruined and like rebuilt. And so it became a very widespread meme. And to the extent that somebody's trying to make money off of it from the coins, which I actually haven't seen, that's not particularly surprising because that's kind of the Trump way, right? To like make money off of selling these trinkets. But selling trinkets is also very, very common in the prosperity gospel circles. Televangelists are always hawking, trinkets and anointing oil and all sorts of things.
So lastly, what's happening with COVID? I mean, when Trump is losing support, is he losing any support in this community? And I imagine a lot of his loss of support is a function of his response to COVID. I think we're seeing that, elderly people are like, you know what, I'm not on board with this. Right. I gotta die for everybody else thing. Is that what's happening in the evangelical community? Is something similar going on, or is it completely immune? I guess not to stretch the analogy from this.
So, there's some polling that his approval ratings among white evangelicals have dipped into the 60s, which they have over the course of his first campaign and presidency. They've sort of fluctuated between the mid 60s to the high 70s. Yet the one poll to poll this question with white evangelicals, their approval of him during the COVID pandemic, to also ask the question, but hey, are you still going to vote for him in November, was Pew. And so they found that something like he only had like a 60-something% approval rating among white evangelicals, but 82% of them said they were still going to vote for him nonetheless. So I think that's the really important question in that polling is, okay, you might not be thrilled with the way he's handling the coronavirus, but you're going to vote for him nonetheless. And I think that in terms of the leadership, I think it's a combination of just kind of ignoring it and talking about other things, or just pretending that he's doing a fantastic job and it's just the fake news and the George Soros funded Black Lives Matter anarchists who are trying in the deep state, who are trying to take him down.
Well, this is fascinating stuff, and I guess we'll find out. I mean, they're going to be there. I think they're sort of the archetype of I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, aren't they? In terms of his supporters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, many of them are.
Well, we will see. Sarah Posner, the book is Unholy: Why White Evangelicals Worship at the Altar of Donald Trump. We will put a link to this at majority.fm. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
All right, folks. I'm going to head into the fun half. We've got a couple of breaking stories. One about the Umbrella Man. You remember that dude? He was the guy who was smashing the windows at the AutoZone, and he looked very, very suspicious in the way that he did it.
Yeah.
He has not been charged, but according to the Star Tribune, police are saying that Umbrella Man was a white supremacist trying to incite George Floyd rioting at the time, that he may be a member of the Hells Angels biker gang. You don't hear that too often anymore.
It's a throwback.
It's a little bit of a throwback. And that the suspect, apparently there was a tip via email that came into the cops. They have also connected the man. There's been no charges filed yet, which suggests to me that they don't quite have full proof yet, to an event in Stillwater, I guess that's in Minnesota, in which a Muslim woman was confronted by a group of men wearing white supremacist garb. Not sure what that means. Presumably maybe like white sheets or something to that effect. We will see if this is the guy. But I mean, he looked super suspicious, when that happened. It did not seem, it was quite clear he wasn't of the protests. It seemed to me anyways.
Importantly, it seemed to the protesters themselves.
Yeah, they were all going like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you running off? They all thought he was a cop. Now, who knows who knows, but apparently they at least think that they know him as a suspect. And I guess there'll be more investigation into that. We also have, I held off on this because there was a press release by Steny Hoyer this morning responding to the Republican proposal for the, it was good. I mean, it sounded like, to me anyways, let me get it right here. Where do I have this thing here? They came out to work with the House to craft an emergency aid package that extends these programs and helps public servants. Sadly, the package they introduced today fails to rise to the public health and economic challenges facing our nation. I'm deeply concerned the bill includes an unrelated White House demand for construction of new FBI quarters. Now that the Senate Republicans have at least announced, I urge them to move forward in negotiations immediately with the House to craft a final version that meets this moment and can be enacted into law without delay. Democrats remain ready. The American people demand action now to protect. And so it was, they came out staking a position. But I didn't want to get too excited about it. And let's see, that statement was released, July 27th. So maybe last night, late, 12 hours later, CNN, Hoyer says Democrats aren't demanding $600 or bust. He's there. In other words, let me pre-negotiate our position away. So I want to make it absolutely clear. You've come in with $200 and we're at $600 and we're no longer at $600. So, I mean,
I can't help but feeling that people like Steny Hoyer love to be in this position with Trump and the Republicans running things, and they can just easily fundraise off of it, but also, be horrible in terms of like giving money to people.
I mean, it's just I don't understand what the theory is here.
I think it's all pretty, it's pretty consistent. It's responsible government. You can't have the FBI building because there's concerns about Trump's, possible benefits from that construction. And at the same time, we're not going to, shut down, keep government from functioning because of a couple $100 for individuals.
It's absurd. It's absurd. And I just don't, they are just completely committed to this idea of we're going to do virtually nothing and just make this a referendum about Donald Trump. But the problem is that maybe they're counting on winning the Senate too. But again, you're still your baseline. Like, even if the fact is that you can be a power craven individual and still see the benefit of giving people $600 a week. In fact, you should see a significant benefit to that. It's just, it's nuts. But do we have Nomi? Is she in the waiting room?
Yep, here she is.
Nomi and I will talk about this and the DNC platform. I know that Nomi's a little jaded when it comes to the platform, but we will talk more about that. Right? Am I right?
How do you know me so well, Sam?
You are. You don't play that one too close to the vest. I got to tell you.
I was gonna say I've been keeping it inside. Maybe that's how jaded I am. Is that what I have released is just like 10% of how jaded I am.
Exactly. I can only imagine. But all right, so we're going to take a break. I want to encourage you. Nomi, who's on your show this week?
Anna Kasparian.
Anna Kasparian's on.
A long tribute to Michael.
Okay, and people can check that out. Anna, of course, you've worked with Michael in a myriad of different ways. I know he did some work for you when you ran for office in the city, and Anna has been hosting a show with him for Jacobin on weekends. I think it's called Weekends.
Yep.
And so folks can check that out. Also, check out The Antifada, patreon.com/The Antifada. Jamie's got a lot of things going on this week. Matt, tonight, I know you guys are doing a special TMBS tonight.
Yeah, we're having some live people stop by, and we have some video highlights of Michael, and then some more messages. And so it'll be another sort of the final memorial show before we get back to work next week, keeping the show alive. So yeah, check that out. TMBS YouTube channel tonight, folks.
Okay. That's youtube.com/The Michael Brooks Show. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Just a reminder, this program relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And check out the AM Quickie. We're doing that every morning, give you a sense of what the news is for the day ahead. And all in about 6 or 7 minutes. We're getting it out very early in the morning now. So you get a sense of get up, have a cup of coffee, And in the time that takes you to finish that, you have a sense of what the day is going to look like in that regard. And of course, we also have merch, shop.majorityreportradio.com. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Nomi's going to join me in the fun half. We'll be right back after this.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them. Almost says what? Almost says what? A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. It is the fun half. Nomi, so we were saying in the main show that things are going to be a little bit weird, obviously, around these parts for a while. I know you have on your show a remembrance of Michael with Anna for I guess an hour or something like that. But I just want to put it out there. Obviously, it's weird and it's sad, and so we're just gonna go through it and try and do the best that we can, and wait for that day that it becomes a little bit more normal to do the show. In the meantime,
how are you doing? How Matt, Brendan, Sam, are you guys holding up?
I think everybody is hanging in there.
I'm doing better. This weekend was nice.
Yes, we were up in Massachusetts, and there was a very small, I guess, COVID-style memorial.
Very COVID style.
And there it's a weird. To some extent, I felt pretty lucky that his family is from Massachusetts, and Massachusetts and New York, New England states are one of the few states we're sort of, in this like mini era of where it's like Europe on some level, in the sense that people have been able to keep the infection rate low, and so you're able, as limited as it was, to have even a gathering like that. I mean, 4 months ago, people couldn't even go to anything like that, and so and it was very nice, and it was I don't want to say it was fun, but it was nice to meet, and see other parts of Michael's life that, as much as I would give him crap about some of those parts of his life.
I think it's kind of beautiful, though. Like, everybody is sharing their stories, and it's revealing just different aspects of him that didn't come first to mind, I think, is
right.
The best way of saying it. It's beautiful. A collection of all these friendships and all these experiences. So it's really
it was really nice. And so, all right, let's move on to something that I am sure that he would have been, wouldn't have been terribly surprised by, but a little bit disappointed. There, the platform has been at least drafted, I guess. I don't know how much of it is done. You're going to walk me through this process a little bit, but the platform committee has decided no Medicare for all. I don't know if we've seen the language yet in terms of like what they, I imagine it's something like expand and strengthen Obamacare.
I can pull it up if we need to.
And there is, at the very least, Sanders delegates are saying they're not going to vote for the Democratic platform. I mean, just put this in context. Like, I know in the past you've said, like, any concessions that Sanders gets on the platform is really not that big of a deal anyways, because the party doesn't follow it. But I think there is value to a platform. It takes a while, but I mean, if you go back and look at the Republican platform just from the state of Texas 15 years ago, you can see that there are instances where, this is a very much a leading indicator of where the party's going. 15 years ago, this stuff in Texas, they put these platforms out. It sounded like sheer insanity. And now it sounds like the mainstream of the Republican Party. So I think there is something to it. If not it being a causal connection, it may be at least a sense of where the party establishment is on something. But give me your take on it.
Well, I guess my response would be, in exchange for what? So again, this is a party that is controlled by special interests, like actually quite, the members of the platform committee are lobbyists. I mean, I'm saying all of them, but some of them that were appointed, many of them, most of them that were appointed are lobbyists and consultants and are in the industries in which they're trying to block this platform from happening. But, I say it's theatrics, and I Jim Zogby, Dr. Zogby called me up last night, and he was a longtime DNC member and was on the executive committee, and we were on the Unity Reform Commission together, and he was on the last platform committee, and he's a big advocate, for Palestinian rights, and he was the first advocate in the DNC for this. And 35 years later, there's still no change. So while that might make some sense about where the party stands, we are opposed right now to the Republican Party that is like AIPAC has completely taken over the Republican Party and part of the Democratic Party. But we're talking about a right-wing Netanyahu. I mean, we understand what's going on here. And even then, the Democrats are still so beholden to these interests. So yes, in terms of like, okay, this is a reflection of what the Democratic Party is, but nobody, like, we all know, we don't need like a platform. We don't need to exhaust everybody and exhaust political leverage on something that is just fundamentally meaningless. When I say I've been on the platform committee. It is exhausting. You have to write amendments and go and fight with these people who already have all the tricks to make sure that they win. They're not even willing to concede on a meaningless platform, but that's what they give us as a theatrical sort of way to excite us and make us feel involved. And like, okay, we'll throw them like a couple of platform pieces. But at the end of the day, the real change in the Democratic Party is in the Rules Committee, in which they've shut out all progressives. And that's where we get rid of the lobbyists in the Democratic Party. That's where we get rid of the chairman's ability to choose whoever they want to be on the Rules Committee, in which they're not elected. So the people deciding how the DNC functions, the rules of the Democratic Party, where the allocation of funds goes, where we invest our resources, all of these things, the people who decide that are chosen, not elected, by the DNC chair. So this platform committee, in 2016, it was beautiful, it was symbolic, but at the end of the day, I think all of us, and it was hard. It was very hard fought and embarrassing. I think for a lot of the Hillary platform committee members that really showed what kind of people they were on camera and with like all the social media around, but then also the Hillary supporters who were really embarrassed to be in a committee with people acting like that. And there were many platform committee members on the Hillary side that said, what do you mean you don't want to expand Social Security? What do you mean, you don't believe in protecting a worker's, right to a fair wage? That was not the party they signed up for. They wanted Hillary for other reasons. And then they saw the inner workings of the machinations of all of these consultants, just their hands in the pot of the Democratic Party. Because that's what this is. The DNC is a pot, and the people controlling the pot are the consultants that are appointed by Tom Perez. Does that make sense?
I mean, so if I hear you correctly, on some level, it provides some clarity to people who might have questions as to where, who's controlling at least the party apparatus. And on the other hand, that it would be nice to have a platform that called for these things, but it is maybe not, it's not necessary, and it's not necessarily worth the effort. Yeah. The real question is ultimately going to be like, what kind of legislation are we going to get? And I guess that's a function of, and I have no illusions. We're not going to get Medicare for all. But, the fact that there was no even like, we're going to expand Medicare to 55, or you can have a buy-in after 50, or just like, there doesn't seem to be anything. And it is, I think it's consistent with what, I actually think it's less about the politics in the Democratic Party and more about this sort of like theory that we're going to give Donald Trump absolutely nothing to run against. Nothing. Even if that's popular, he's just not going to have anything to talk about. Like literally, like if they could put out a Democratic platform that is like, we're just gonna beat Donald Trump, and that was every single point on it, I think that's what they would put out at this point. And from an electoral standpoint, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, if someone was to come to me at this point and say, like, do you want Joe Biden out there carrying a banner for things that you believe in, or do you want him to stay in the basement and just not talk about anything? I would say the latter, because I'm not terribly thrilled with the banner that he's going to be carrying, but even if he did, like, I don't know that he would carry it very well. And like, the important thing is that we stench this bleeding at this point. The problem is that there is no, without an agenda, it becomes very hard for progressives and probably even the party on some level to sort of like take the next steps. And, maybe on some level it's an opportunity for progressives to sort of like step into the void. And I guess we'll have a sense of like how many votes, it won't be just they have 4 votes anymore. Maybe it's going to be they have 9 or 10 or 15. And then you start getting into numbers that you peel off a couple of, so-called moderates, you can hold up some bills in the House.
Well, also, if you think about it from the perspective of like the Tea Party and what they were able to do, this is a crisis of our time. The economy was a crisis for the Tea Party collapsing, and, whether it was justified or not, or the rights, they were correct. It was their, it was what stimulated them to organize locally and pressure and challenge moderates, but also pushed those moderates to the right. on key issues. And I think you're going to see a lot of Democrats, and you're already sort of seeing it in the House, say things like, well, I don't understand. Why can't we support Medicare for all? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, at what point do we do this if we're not going to do it now? At what point do we go into the, and they know, of course, what the reasoning is. And it's of course, I mean, they're so transparent about it right now. Like you said, like, at least we are aware of who's controlling the Democratic Party. But let me just remind everybody, the platform means nothing because nobody runs on the platform. It doesn't mean anything. It's not even a symbol because it's not like we have a strong Democratic Party that is invested in every single state in America. You know, Tom Perez's big push was, I'm giving states $10,000 to organize their parties. Years ago, it was like $150,000, $200,000 per state. So we don't have this like vibrant party that's organizing from the grassroots up that will use that platform as a tool to bring people in. And so, I mean, I just think it's a waste of time. And I actually think that Bernie like fell for it again. And I don't understand why. I just don't understand why. He could flex his muscle and his leverage in so many other ways right now. And that was not one to exercise that political leverage on.
And I think to a certain extent, there is an advantage in the narrative being like, nobody cares about the platform. This is an election where, you know, it's clear that people just want to make it a referendum on Donald Trump. And then I guess the real question is like, you know, what is the strategy? And do you have a sense that progressives are strategizing now on how they will, I mean, assuming there is a Democratic Senate, there's a Democratic House, and there's a Democratic president, are progressives now, and I'm talking about lawmakers and maybe key outside groups, are they formulating a line of attack right now?
You mean on like the centrists once centrists
I mean,
take
yes,
over? Like the establishment takes over?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Nancy Pelosi will be in a position to sort of set the agenda theoretically. I mean, I think she had said she was going to step down after one term as the Speaker of the House, but who knows? But is there? Do you have a sense that there are people out there? I mean, like, I don't know. Is AOC, you know, talking to people and figuring out like this is how we're going to strategize, and this is how we're going to try and move the ball, and this is the area where we're going to hold, you know, we're going to hold the line?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hearing folks talk about this and starting new groups too. There's several new groups that have popped up in the last, I'd say 6 months because I think Charles Booker showed everybody a lot of the cracks in the progressive, you know, ecosystem, like strategy wise. Although people have been complaining about it for a while, it took somebody like Charles Booker, you know, showing just what it would have taken if there were progressive infrastructure out there that supported candidates earlier. So on the electoral side, there's a lot of that strategizing happening. And I think, you know, with that, part of that messaging is, okay, you know, in order for us to move legislation, in order for us to push for Medicare for all, build this caucus, we, number one, have to influence lawmakers in Congress that might lean left, but are basically afraid of Nancy Pelosi. And I think the pandemic makes a really strong case for that. And then number two, you know, we're going to primary you. And number three, you know, she's yes, okay, there are 4 votes and Nancy Pelosi is looking at it mathematically and through the power and the levers of Congress, the way that the DNC looks at it through, okay, well, we control the chessboard and you guys are just like outside actors that come in. But AOC and all of the squad and all progressives, Ro Khanna, you know, they have a megaphone, a very, very powerful megaphone and fundraising apparatus that now they can use their fundraising to invest in other candidates, invest in other causes, invest in organizing on the ground. I mean, this is real money. This isn't like joke money. This is not a couple $1 million every quarter. This is like AOC raising $9-10 million a quarter. You know, Ro Khanna's chief of staff is starting his own fundraising organization to build another layer of progressive donors. We at Matric are teaching our candidates how to fundraise because honestly, working class, I mean, it's just what it is. Nobody knows how to fundraise when they're running for office the first time. And that is, you know, every candidate, every campaign that is strong is investing in that locality. Like you're building a pipeline. I can't tell you how many people have worked on one campaign and then run for office, or they'll go work, on an issue or start a firm in which they're helping other candidates. This is how you build that pipeline. And the DNC becoming centralized for the last 10 years really zapped that away and gave more power to Nancy Pelosi. So it's, I think that's kind of where the strategy is right now. I don't know what happens. I mean, legislatively, yeah. I don't think they have the numbers right now. And I think that's why they're really focusing on electoral politics.
Interesting. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 770 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey there, Sam, Nomiki, Brendan, Matt, Jamie, MR crew, everybody out there. I really do hope y'all are doing well. This is David in Atlanta.
Hey, David, what's on your mind?
I really appreciated the interview today. I found it really insightful. I'm fascinated with the subject. Coming up down here, I went to a private Christian middle school where the curriculum included Adam and Eve riding dinosaurs in the science books, and our Bible teacher saying that God created AIDS to, because he got tired of gay people. One of the things I really, really appreciated about Michael is, as somebody who got turned off to Christianity and the culture I came up in because of that, but then sort of regained an interest in it through the study of historical Jesus, the history of Abrahamic religions. I just loved Michael's embrace of spirituality, his combination of his, pragmatism and, pardon the language, no bullshit approach to things, but also his deeper understanding of the need to, the quote that comes to mind is him saying not allowing Steve Bannon to have a monopoly in the Bhagavad Gita. Just that synthesis. And I loved that from him. And I'm hoping that really will kind of, gain some legs on the left and allow some of us to kind of get a hold of some of that. I feel like that's lacking in a lot of ways. Just wanted to say that. Again, really hope y'all are doing well. Please take care of yourselves. You're so important, and we all love what you do. But I can't imagine how tough things are. But love y'all. Stay strong. Left is best.
Thanks, David. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, David.
We're going to convert you, Sam. We're going to convert you to spirituality, Sam.
Sam was a religion major at college.
I was actually a religion. I think I was a religion minor or a religion minor. I think.
Oh, geez, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, but yes, I am in the spirituality department. A little bit of a skeptic in that regard, but. I mean, that's, I said at Michael's memorial, like when I was preparing what I was going to say, I couldn't really get through it because I kept hearing him mocking me and the different things I would say. And then also when I was there, I was like, I knew that he would know that I would mock him for things at the ceremony that were also spiritual. And that was basically where my spirituality lies. It's somewhere in there, and in I think we used to call it snaps. I think it was.
Yeah, I spent my summers in the Berkshires, and I'm familiar with like the sort of milieu you're describing. And imagining you in that space, even just for a few hours, is very enriching to me.
Yeah, it was.
Well, okay, just to like the lesson in this all, I think it really is about bringing that humanity to politics, and so much of that is zapped. Even on the progressive side, it's like become a power game for everybody. Like we have to defeat the centrists. It's like, well, but I mean, yes, it's deeply rooted in can we make people's lives better?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, my journey with it was I got into sort of like the atheists like Dawkins and Hitchens, and then I never really got into Sam Harris, but you really feel the void of that in that movement, the void of like how, just because I was just anti-spirituality, and I think that's why like I was ready to come to like Michael and Majority Report. Like we always joked about how skeptical I was about it, but I'm basically open to that for the last like half decade.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'm not anti-religious. I mean, I think like it has a real material function. for people. It changes, I mean, different people for different reasons, but I mean, it has a real material function, I think. But at one point, we interviewed Desmond Tutu.
Wow.
14, 15 years ago.
Wow.
And he put it this way: religion is like a knife. You can use it to spread butter, or you can use it to stick somebody. And he said, it's and I thought that was pretty wise. I mean, particularly after we just with the interview we had today. All right, so let's move to this. Donald Trump, we're looking at new polling now that shows that his support is cratering in some of the swing states, and it is also cratering for a lot of those senators who incumbent Republican senators who decided to vote to protect him during the impeachment. It's very difficult for these people to escape their association with Donald Trump. Now, that is also typically the case. So it's not necessarily things like impeachment, but that's one of the values in my mind was always about impeachment, was that you have the most explicit I support Donald Trump vote that can exist in the context of our government. There is no vote of confidence. And that impeachment vote, I think, sort of lingers there. So we're seeing these numbers in places like Arizona, in places like North Carolina, in Michigan, in races around the country where the Republican senators are cratering a bit, and Donald Trump is too. However, he's got a response for that. Here's clip number one.
Poll numbers are very good. The poll numbers we have are very good. We're leading in North Carolina. We're leading in Pennsylvania. We're leading in Arizona. Our numbers. We're leading in Arizona. We're leading nicely in Florida. I think our poll numbers are very good. We're leading substantially in Georgia. I mean, we get a lot of suppression polls. We get a lot of fake polls, just like we have fake news. I mean, it's a terrible thing when you look at it. But I had the same thing 4 years ago. I was losing everywhere. I had poll numbers where I wasn't going to win any state, and I ended up winning every one of them. The swing states. I wasn't going to win any of them, and I won all of them. And I have the same thing this year. This year they have it even closer. They have it closer, but it's the same suppression-type polls. We have polls that show me leading in almost every swing state, and substantially in other states by even more than I won in 2016. When you look at Florida as an example, you have thousands of boats out of the ocean, out on the intercoastal. You look at other states where likewise you have thousands of boats, and they're all waving the Trump sign, Trump-Pence sign, and they're so proud. Thousands and thousands. You've seen it, where you have bikers for Trump with lines that are miles long on highways going along on weekends. I think there's more spirit now than there's ever been for my campaign, and that includes 2016.
So wait a second. They have these internal polls that show them up in all these swing states, and here's some evidence backing that up. There are boaters and bikers who are supporting you.
It's the new sign. It's the new. Oh, have you seen all the signs on the street? It's the yard signs. It's the boat signs. It's the biker signs.
The recreational vehicle.
Are there that many boaters? I mean, I imagine there's a lot of boaters in the intercoastal. What do you call it?
And I do imagine Trump cleans up with them.
Yeah, I would imagine that's the case. But I mean, are we really talking about that many? I feel like that's like they could all basically vote at one district.
Those are the people he sees in Mar-a-Lago. It's like all he sees all day long is just boats.
I mean, you really get the sense from that there is someone who's in charge in the White House of making sure that he's okay. And they're going in and they're like, okay, just change the polls, go in there, tell them we got great polls, and then just keep talking about the boaters and the bikers. Like, where is Donald Trump seeing miles of bikers driving? Where is he seeing that? Someone obviously told him that they saw this at one point, right? A long time ago. And he's just like holding on to this thing like it's like, it's precious.
Well,
the
didn't
story about the biker.
A rally with, I mean, I know they used to have biker rallies. It was that one biker guy who was making the rounds on TV. I forgot his name, whatever, he's gone now. And then they did a rally with the boats at one point, like recently. It was like a COVID rally. It was like the moment they like addressed COVID, but really it was an opportunity for him.
How many boats though can you get even like into a harbor, like small boats, like 200? Like there's 200 people who are supporting me in Florida.
What's interesting, he seems to be tying it to enthusiasm, but because the idea of enthusiasm, is abstract to him and not really like going to change the outcome of how many people vote, he can't like just rest his hat on that. He has to it has to be grand, it has to be boats, it has to be, recreational vehicles in support of him as well.
My people. Let's go back. Let's pivot back to some of the COVID denial. Here is Laura Ingraham and Alex Berenson. Who is Alex Berenson? You know who that guy is, right? He's like some type of I don't know. Is he like a former Democrat type of I don't know who this guy is.
The former Times reporter, I believe,
okay.
And now turned spy novelist.
Okay. And he was on with Laura Ingraham. Let me put it this way. Not a doctor. He was on with Laura Ingraham. Also not a doctor. Not an epidemiologist. Not a public policy, like a healthcare policy. None of that. Here is the two of them talking about how COVID is a joke, man.
Even though for most people they're not clinically significant. We've seen some deaths, many fewer deaths in the last month than in March and April in New York and in the Northeast. And we've seen no hospital overrun, no evidence that the system, the medical system, cannot handle.
We flatten the curve, Alex. We're gonna go, but we flatten the curve. That's what you're saying, and yet they keep moving the goalposts because they want to shut the economy down.
You said it better than I did.
Period.
There you go. I don't know why she invited him on. But we flatten the curve, and it is the case that the curve was flattened, at least in New York.
In it, yeah.
Not so much so in Texas, not so much in Florida, not so much in Arizona. Curve is not flattened. And just because he flattened it once doesn't mean that it can't come back. The idea is we're still, as of today in New York, we're at a R0, I think they call it, of 1.02, which means that for every person who gets it, they give it to slightly more than one other person. And what you want to get to is where you have an R0 of under 1, where you don't, when one person gets it, they do not transmit it to another person. Or, it takes 2 people and then a third person gets it or something like that. I want to read this story. This is a little bit disturbing. It was in the Dallas Voice. It's by a, he says,
contributing writer there, right?
I think so. Yeah. He says, I'm a gay conservative, someone that often juggles persecution for my sexuality while being true to my values. Requires a lot of tenacity to earn respect from either group, he says. So he writes his pieces from yesterday. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 2 or 3 days ago. I admit I voted for Donald Trump in 2016. I admit traveling deep into the conspiracy trap over COVID-19. All the defiant behavior of Trump's more radical and rowdy cult followers. I participated in it. It was hard. I was a hard ass that stood up for my God-given rights. In great haste, I began prognosticating the alphabet soup about this scandemic.
Oh, my God.
Scamdemic, right? I believe the virus to be a hoax. I believe the mainstream media and the Democrats were using it to create panic, crash the economy, and destroy Trump's chances at re-election. And so, believing the pandemic to be a hoax, my partner and I hosted family members on Saturday, June 13th. On Sunday, June 14th, I woke up sick. By Monday, June 15th, my partner and my parents were all sick. That same Monday, my in-laws traveled to witness the birth of their first grandchild. They took with them my father-in-law's mother and one of my partner's sisters. That night, my father-in-law became ill. Then my mother-in-law and their daughter began feeling sick, so they cut their trip short. 2 days later, my father-in-law's mother got sick. The new mommy and daddy got sick too. We all tested positive for COVID-19. Only the newborn was spared. My father-in-law and I both went to the hospital on June 24th. It's 10 days after, 11 days after the party. The virus had attacked my central nervous system, and the staff stopped me from having a stroke. My father-in-law's mother was admitted a day later. On July 1st, she died of COVID-19 pneumonia. The chaplain wanted the family to break the news to my father-in-law, and he learned how his mother lay on her deathbed and then drifted off without any family by her side, even though he was in the room next to hers. On the day of her funeral, which was July 14th, 5 more of our family members tested positive for the virus. That evening, my father-in-law was put on a ventilator. You cannot imagine the guilt I feel knowing that I hosted the gathering that led to so much suffering. You cannot imagine my guilt at having been a denier, carelessly shuffling through this pandemic, making fun of those wearing masks and social distancing. You cannot imagine my guilt at knowing that my actions convinced both our families it was safe when it wasn't. He goes on to talk about the severity of this. He says, next time you're put out because your favorite spots are closed or because they won't let you enter without a mask, and you decide to defy them rather than comply, you're defending your rights and freedoms from being trampled. Just remember, your family and friends may be next. People should go and read the entire piece because it's pretty devastating.
This is in Texas?
This is in Texas. And, the thing that we don't
Turn that
hear
into
about...
an ad. That should be an ad. That
It
guy
really
should get
be.
in an ad against Donald Trump.
It really should be. And the thing that people don't realize is it's not just the deaths. It's also the complications that exist potentially for years. We just don't know enough about this. And the thing that people don't seem to realize too is that, we either do these things or we have millions of people die. I mean, we all stop with the masks tomorrow. I mean, if Charlie Kirk had his way, we would all stop with the masks, presumably just go about our lives. And if we did that, not only would it come back to parts of the country like New York and Connecticut in full force, but we would have, at the end of whatever period of time, millions of people dead and millions more who will be living with the implications of this illness for years and years and years.
And the pandemic will go on possibly for decades.
It's really a function. I mean, you need to get to some type of herd immunity if that is, possible. I mean, I think I think it's going to be trickier to get to maybe than some suspect, but we don't know. We really don't know. We just know that if we don't do anything, and you can't lock away people in their 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s for the rest of their lives, you're going to have millions of people die. And
here's my perspective on Charlie Kirk, though, and all of these right-wingers. If you want Trump to win, then you should probably make sure that the country is healthy and do your best to make him healthy. And he should be thinking that. If I want the economy to recover, truly recover, if I want people to be healthy so that our healthcare system doesn't crash, and I don't want these stories to keep popping up, then I should probably tell everybody to wear a mask. And maybe that's what's happening internally and why he's addressing masks a little bit more. But it's just bonkers at this point.
Well, I mean, that's the thing I can't understand about any of this, frankly. Like, look, they're going to give, like the Republicans are saying $200. Steny Hoyer has already conceded, well, we're not going to hold the line on $600. So, maybe it comes out to like it's $250 or $300 or $400, extra a week for a short period of time. It's going to get there late anyways. People are looking at, evictions. They have months of rent that they're going to have to pay back, and they're not going to be able to do it with an extra couple $100 a week. And what I don't understand is, like, who thinks this is in their best interest electorally? And, I mean, I don't, it would be nice if we could rely on just like general competence and some type of compassion for other human beings, but I don't even understand it from their own self-interest. And like you say, like, I think to a certain extent, what happened with the whole COVID denial is that they thought they could pretend like it wasn't going to happen. I don't know how they thought that, but I think that's their relationship with science and just sort of reality. Donald Trump, I think, just feels like, if you keep denying that you lied or that you did something wrong and you keep denying it forever, it goes away. I think that's been his lifelong experience. And I think he thought he could do the same thing with this. And I think once you launch that ship, as it were, it's like an aircraft carrier. It's like, you can't reverse it on a dime, right? Like it has inertia. And I think that's where they're at with this. And I wonder, when I look at what's going on with these stimuluses, I wonder if Mitch McConnell isn't saying like, we're going to lose, or there's a 60% chance we're going to lose. And
60%.
I mean,
at this point, it's looking, yeah.
Well, I mean, who knows what his calculation is, but I think the thing that he's trying to do is like, maybe we can just keep it good enough that Trump can eke something out, but not so good that it won't be a real problem for Biden when he comes in. If I'm the Democrats at this point, what I am doing is trying to make sure there is a baseline of automatic stabilizers built into these things. Now, of course, it's the one thing that Nancy Pelosi left out of the HEROES Act. I mean, there was a lot of garbage in there as well, but the one thing she left out was that automatic stabilizers. In other words, and you know what I'm talking about, but if you certain benchmarks, if unemployment still is at this level 3 months out, then this continues. If it drops to here, then we cut it. We cut the benefits by X amount or whatever it is. If it rises, we raise benefits. So in other words, you don't have to go back and have Mitch McConnell have the ability to filibuster or to, somehow, maybe he's in control of the Senate and can just not even bring it up and just obstruct.
But this is where I think the ultimate influence over the Democrats and the Republicans, and of course there's extreme versions of this, and it's also why I don't understand why Trump is going so far, because no matter what happens at this point, the economy is wrecked. So the vulture capitalists, the all of the financial interests that are a big part of both parties, no matter what, whether it's charter schools or real estate, vulture capital, whatever it is, by distressed assets, that part of the disaster capitalism part, like, it's going to happen no matter what. Why dig deeper? And it's going to be bad. And like, the reality is it is a big part of the party. And like, nobody wants to say it out in the open, but the Republicans, Democrats don't fight against this. They demonize Betsy DeVos, but they're all in bed together. I don't know. I just find, I'm just trying to think about it from an economic perspective. Like, at what point are they just going to say, okay, enough? Like, you got your share.
It's shocking.
I mean, the rental industry is the perfect example in New York. Like 40% of New Yorkers are likely going to be moving out of their apartments at this point and have not paid rent in the last 2 months. And you as a New Yorker, it's a real estate industry buying up distressed assets all over. Small businesses shutting down, Same thing. But at what point? I mean, it's going to take so long for the economy to recover. 15, 20 years, none of these people are going to be around.
I don't understand it. I really don't. Let's go to the phones. We got a lot. Okay. Did we close that off? Okay, good. Calling from I just greened it. Calling from a 347 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 347? Oh, he's on a different call. 347.
Hold on, I'm calling into another show right now.
Bye-bye. Tell Dave Packman. Say hi. Calling from a 720 area code. Who's this? Oh, excuse me, 702 area code. Who's this? 702. 702. 702. Good day. Let's try this again. Calling from a 614 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Steve.
Steve, were you talking to your phone?
Yeah. Hold on. I got my wired headphones. Hear me now?
Yeah. That's better.
Okay. Yeah, I've been listening to Majority Report since it was you and Janine, so I'm getting to be an old guy.
Tell me about it.
I just wanted to share. Yeah. Back when I was in high school in the 90s, there was a group, an after-school group, that was based on Amnesty International, and we did these letter writing campaigns. And I remember learning about the School of the Americas.
Yeah.
And you know, I was I don't know, 14, 15, and thinking like, is this for real? How big a deal is it? Like, you know, things happen in war all the time, and it just seemed really niche. And then, you know, being a leftist and you know, trying to learn and you know, getting acculturated to all the information that was out there, it was just really a burden to try to read like you know, Noam Chomsky or any of those other books, and it, a lot of times, you know, it aligned with my values, but it's just such a burden. And I wanted to point out that was Michael's particular genius, like with his shows on the international subjects, on Majority Report, and also TMBS. He was able to take all these topics.
You got to talk into your phone more. I cannot hear you.
Let me.
Yeah, that's it. That's better.
Move
That's
to another
better.
area.
That's better.
Okay. But yeah, he made all of this accessible, and you know, if we had him in the 90s or the 2000s, you know, he would have made amazing contributions, and you know, his voice.
All right, I got to let you go because whatever's happening with your phone is no good. But I heard your point. I mean, Michael did have an uncanny ability to make things that seemed so Byzantine and foreign, you know, make them understandable and bring them into a context and a framework that I think, you know, was easier to understand. Without a doubt, this is not a lot of, you know, access to it, this stuff. And certainly, like, you know, part of it is also the nature of this format. What he was doing, you know, podcasts can do this, but I mean, he had a YouTube show. So he was sort of like taking stuff that was sort of more narrowly casted, generally, to the extent that it was ever out there, and broadening it to an audience on YouTube, which, you know, I don't know if folks have seen a lot of YouTube stuff, but a lot of it's not that heady, as it were. And that was indeed, you know, one of the things that I think that Michael was able to do that made that show so special, made his show so special, and that Matt and Griscom are going to hopefully continue on.
A lot of it came from he just put the work into understanding the things at a deep level, and he'd like he could be able to talk about Burundi just off the top of his head, right? Like I wish I had asked him like where he found the time in between like Chronix albums and stuff like that to read all that stuff.
I actually asked him something like that when I was starting my show. I was like, where do you have the time to read everything? And I guess he was just really structured in it. I mean, I said this when we did the tribute. He was intentional. He told me, he was like, I'm working very hard at not letting the bullshit, the Twitter bullshit, all this stuff suck you in, because you know, at the end of the day, it sucks a lot of time from your schedule. And I don't know, I guess he was just really thoughtful about that.
I feel like that's all I've been able to do the past week is just like sort of like vaguely stumble around in Twitter, and maybe that's not the best thing
healthy
for me. But here is this I think he would appreciate. Dave Rubin. He's about to go. Dave Rubin takes August off, which is nice. I would enjoy doing that. But he
very European of him.
Very European. Here's Dave Rubin, an expert on. Well, I don't know what. I mean, he's there talking about Antifa apparently and the SJWs. He's on with Judge Jeanine. And I don't know, sometimes you get the feeling that Rubin is on a tour to be disrespected by as many different people that he looks up to as possible. We've all seen the classic Larry King video where in the middle of an interview, he takes a call from his grandson, or is his son? I'm not sure. And completely ignores Dave for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes in the middle of a live interview. Here's Judge Jeanine basically saying, like, nothing you're saying is important anyways, we got to go.
Because he had all of these pro-Trump signs in front of his business. Now, they're thinking that murder may have been politically motivated.
Well, this was the danger that I was warning about for about 5 years on my show, because if you call everybody a Nazi, if all of your political opponents are Nazis and white supremacists and bigots and racists and homophobes, the worst things that we can come up with, well, then it won't just be enough to defeat them in the battle of ideas. Of course, violence will be okay. And now the bizarre part here is that these same people who seemingly are for violence, or not seemingly, we know they're for violence, they also will tell you words are violent. Right. So certain words apparently are too dangerous for them, but then violence. That really is the danger of this entire movement. It's not based in something that we can build the society around. If you want to talk about any of the issues that they want to talk about, whatever they believe, see all sorts of people across the political spectrum that will talk to you. But Dave, if your answer is we're going to, we're going to burn everything down, people won't do it.
I've got to cut you off, Dave. All right, Dave Rubin, thanks for being with us tonight. We'll be right back.
If you're like, what's the argument? Is that everybody's burning something down, so nobody's going to talk to you?
I don't know. I need like a flow chart of his ideas. There's got to be somebody who can the word bubbles to figure out where his logic comes from.
It's really sad the way he needs to act like he's been like, this is what his whole project. This is why he's been talking to these idiots on his show for so long, is exactly this. Like,
right,
how many times he's going to plug his show? Right, I think that's what got her. That's what got her. She's like, no, it's about me, Dave, not you, me.
His whole 5-year project of inviting on, alt-right folks and people who are sort of like, just, politely racist, was all about teaching people that you got to discuss these ideas. It's stunning to me, his whole, how much he worships ideas. And I don't know that I've ever heard an idea from him. He doesn't seem to have an idea. And all the ideas that he wants to entertain all seem to be about how really we should maintain a structure of dominance in this country that rewards a specific narrow group of people and thought. That really seems to be what his project has been, but also that, and to get cucked by people he goes on in various formats with.
Someone should do a montage of all like the right wing and his heroes who. I feel like he's sort of lost in the wilderness a little bit. I do feel like that, because he, I think he has been booted from the IDW. Mm-hmm. And I think he thought that he could continue to sort of walk this tightrope and join back and not be labeled as someone who is with Glenn Beck. And then he goes on these Fox programs, and it's not enough for him to go on Tucker because he's not ultimately, he's going to have to deliver what Tucker's audience expects. And then he goes on Judge Jeanine, and like, he can't, I feel like he's a little bit lost. He likes that Steve, what's his name? Steve Hilton, that guy.
Oh, is that right?
His favorite. Yeah. I've seen him.
Is that British guy?
Yeah. The guy who
the
used
bald
to,
guy?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a lunatic. Yes. All right. Well, that completely makes sense.
How much longer does Dave have to put in work for this before he can say that I've lost my way and I'm returning back to, liberalism?
Why? No, he'll never do that.
You don't think so?
I think I think what's going to happen, they're trying so hard to build a generation through the IDW and what else. He's going to have to come back. There's just no time and population it's just going to happen, or he's going to get off TV.
It's tough though, because his entire proposition was the left is going too extreme, and he would have to admit he went too extreme. Right. And I just don't think he has that capacity to do that.
Right. You don't think Dave is that selfless or self-effacing? I think
I'm going to transcend. I'm learning from Michael Brooks. I want to transcend my ego and really have some self-reflection.
Well, the problem is that I think for a while his whole dream was to be Larry King. I mean, he wanted to be. I think he just wanted to be a broadcaster, and I think he just realized that he's just not interesting enough. And he's just not capable of it. And people are just not interested in, these puff pieces, and he should have just gone into entertainment news. Mm-hmm. And he started getting, I think he was pretty excited that he was considered an intellectual in the IDW. And then when he realized he ran up against a wall there, because you can't keep saying I'm only interested in ideas and create that expectation with your audience that you're actually going to have ideas. And when they show up, there's no ideas there. And so he realized how am I going to keep this gravy train going? And he went over to Glenn Beck and joined that. And I think he realizes my prediction is that he's even further right. He is full bore within a year or two.
Or he becomes, if Trump wins again, he joins the Trump administration as a spokesperson, because that's where all these people go to die.
He said he would be the spokesman or the press officer for Matt Gaetz's presidency.
Oh my God!
Oh, there you go.
Naturally.
Wow. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 240 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, this is Brianna from Bowling Green, Virginia.
Hi, Brianna. What's on your mind?
First of all, I want to send my condolences to everyone over there at the jury report for the loss of Michael.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm a newcomer to your guys' show, and I just discovered him a couple months ago, so I don't know too much about him, like a whole lot of other people do. But it is sad that we did lose such a powerful voice on the left side, and it was a devastating blow for progressives, for me personally. So it's sad that he's gone. So I hopefully we're able to keep his legacy alive going forward and push for that ideology that he had, that so many people loved him for. So
thank you, Brianna. Appreciate it.
So my question is that I already heard you talking about, because I was going to bring up Danny Hoyer, I believe you said.
Yeah.
The guy who just said that we're not going to fight for the $600 unemployment benefits. And it's I understand we have to get rid of Donald Trump. I want to get rid of Donald Trump, and I understand that Joe Biden is the only way to get rid of Donald Trump. But these Democrats are just so frustrating. They're just unbearable at times, and I just don't understand what their motive is for not fighting for that, especially when so many people are, hurting and are out of work, and them not fighting for, people are going to be evicted here soon from all their apartments and houses, and they have no plan for that. At least not one I've seen. So I understand we have to get rid of the Republicans and Donald Trump, but if and when Joe Biden wins and if the Democrats take over the Senate, we have to focus on getting rid of some of those corporate Democrats.
Without a doubt.
We have to.
I mean,
and force Joe Biden to the left as much as we can. Because one thing I will give Joe Biden, he seems to be listening a lot more than Hillary Clinton did. That on the surface level, if that makes sense. But we have to get rid of some of those corporate Democrats.
I don't think he's really
Appreciate the call, Brianna.
Yeah, I don't think he's listening, but like I said earlier, the most reactionary parts of the Democratic coalition don't really mind if the Republicans can just pass all this pro-corporate stuff for another 4 years. So the reason to get Trump out of office and put a Democrat at the head of accountability is so you can actually agitate against Joe Biden again, right? And define those people as the problem. I mean, it's simple, right? We should know this by now.
Oh my God. I mean, that was the argument for Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely.
Was just like, that's the foil you want.
Yes.
That's where you it'll be very clear, like exactly like, where everybody stands in this situation.
And the process too. I mean, people weren't aware of the process, but now if all eyes are on the Democrats.
I look, that's obviously not as good as having, Sanders win and having, I don't know. I mean, imagine having, I don't know that Booker could have won in Kentucky, but imagine having that kind of progressive senator from Kentucky, like what that would have done in the Senate. But with all that said, look, I think I can answer Brianna's question very easily. Why are the Democrats not fighting for this? Because the last thing they want to do right now is fight. It doesn't even matter what it is. They don't want to fight. They don't want to be seen fighting. Now, they don't want to feed
the trolls. The Republicans are the trolls. Don't feed them.
With that also said, they also want to feed their corporate benefactors. So you get something like extension, we're going to subsidize Cobra. That is bizarre. It is bizarre. Here is Vox is reporting Democrats introduce a bill to fund legal assistance for those facing eviction.
Interesting.
This is coming from Ayanna Pressley, Rosa DeLauro, and Senator Kamala Harris. Legal assistance for Americans facing eviction. It's just like, what?
Paid for by the legal lobby, whatever the Association of Lawyers.
Well, I mean, it's just like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Just give me a break. Just subsidize people. You know what? You want to subsidize the landlords? Here's a great way to do it. Give people a couple $1,000 a month.
Of course.
And they can pay their rent.
Of course.
Boom.
You can't buy distressed properties.
I just there it is. Done. Give them $2,000 a month. Have the IRS cut them a check. You tax it back. If you give it to everybody. And then you tax it back. It's $2,000 taxable. You'll have a certain percentage. I don't know what it'll be, 40% that won't have to pay any taxes on it. And
they make money off of poverty, Sam. Like, we know this is the one thing I'll say about Joe Biden also that is a little different than even Hillary, I think, and definitely Obama is he's just, as much as we talk about how likable he is, he's not that likable by the Democrats. Maybe he is by some centrist Republicans, but he's just not. So the pressure points are going to be even more clear, whereas we were disillusioned. And I don't know. I think that Matt Stoller, of course, is excluded from this, but we had these opportunities, obviously, under Obama, and we didn't exercise them as much as we could have. And obviously the movement is much stronger, and we have very clear definitions of what neoliberalism is. But I think he also is not going to be some sort of distraction president.
There's the sense of where the opposition within the Democratic Party to the nominee is versus with Obama is just, I can't even tell you how radically different I think the perspective is. Is Tucker back from his vacation?
Yep. Is
Tucker back?
I don't know yet.
Tucker went on vacation just as there were allegations about sexual harassment. In part, I think, certainly against Ed Henry at Fox News. And then some guests had some issues with Tucker Carlson as well. I think they're being sued. I'm not quite sure about that. And that was also, we should be clear, right after Tucker was shocked by the self-righteousness of people who were upset that his head writer was writing for him and also writing for a white supremacist site like Incel and white supremacy writings on a forum. And he was really offended that people would point that out because that's really inappropriate. And he wants to also assure you that his having a writer, a head writer, who, according to the writer, at a different time, it said every first draft of Tucker's monologues comes from me. Actively posting racist stuff on a board had absolutely no influence on his show.
Well, hey, Sam, those were the ones that Tucker didn't approve, and he didn't want to waste the good writing. He had to put it somewhere.
Right. That's exactly right. Like, they all can't be gems. Try them out here and see how they fly. Tucker, back from vacation, has this to say. And remember, he's the right-wing populist, right? He cares about the working person.
But I noticed that in affluent neighborhoods like the one I've spent a lot of my life living in, not one person will judge out-of-wedlock births, but there are no out-of-wedlock births. Everyone's married and has kids within marriage. What does that tell you?
It tells you that the elites have lost faith in the bourgeois values that they practice but are not willing to articulate because they believe that somehow they're associated with white supremacy. We've been hearing a lot, Tucker, about this white privilege meme. That's a poisonous fiction.
Wait, we can play that clip back just one more time. I understand what he's saying here because they're dancing around something.
There's a lot going on.
Now, understand, Tucker Carlson was raised, I guess he was adopted by his, I think he was adopted by his father's new wife. She is an heiress or the Swanson. I mean, like, these people are extremely wealthy, like wealthy beyond. And he's saying that in my neighborhood where I grew up in, everybody was in a 2-family household. And even though they don't judge, that's what's going on. Even though they don't judge they live the value of 2-family households. Now, let's just play this again so the people can absorb what's going on. And then we should also note that his guest, she pivots. Who's his guest?
Manhattan Institute.
Yeah, Heather McDonald.
Heather McDonald, author of Our Police Racist and other books like that.
Yeah, she pivots to it being about race. So he doesn't have to explicitly say it. And now, I should be clear. My guess is Tucker did not grow up in an integrated neighborhood. I'm not saying that you need to, but I'm just saying that, like, I just think that, like, he may be a little bit myopic about generalizing from his neighborhood, but continue.
But I noticed that in affluent neighborhoods like the one I've spent a lot of my life living in, not one person will judge out-of-wedlock births, but there are no out-of-wedlock births. Everyone's married and has kids within marriage. What does that tell you?
It tells you that the elites have lost faith in the bourgeois values that they practice but are not willing to articulate because they believe that somehow they're associated with white supremacy. We've been hearing a lot, Tucker, about this white privilege meme. That's a poisonous fiction.
What does that? What?
Well, this is what's going on here. He's saying that how come in the neighborhoods I've grown up in, people don't judge out of wedlock births, but they don't have any out of wedlock births.
The rich white people are too nice to tell anyone that they're doing something wrong now.
And she says that the elite, like you, Tucker, right? Because Tucker's talking about his experience. The elite like you, that not you, Tucker, but all of your elite friends, have lost faith in their values about having children within wedlock. Now, this is the guy who's being touted as the, caring about the little guy. And even though he criticizes the Republicans, even though they're the only chance to save society, as he said, here he is not making any type of connection between the idea of, like, children born out of wedlock and poverty. Children born out of wedlock and, the lack of social services. Now, of course, he does know children who are born out of wedlock, but they live together maybe, or maybe they don't. And he knows single parents, of course.
He was born in San Francisco and raised in La Jolla, just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around a lot of money, and they are now taking these elite to task for not being judgmental enough about children born out of wedlock. First of all, I would imagine that the rates of children born out of wedlock have gone down, but this is an old trope, ladies and gentlemen. This is an old story you're hearing. This is another way of saying there's something fundamentally wrong with non-white culture that breeds this type of children being born out of wedlock, just engaging in sex willy-nilly, lack of responsibility. I mean, this is old school.
This is definitely old school.
Well, it's got a new flavor to it as well, to say that the nuclear family is a function of white supremacy. And now, woke white people are also going to let, this incivility run rampant over the country because they're too afraid to say anything about it, even though in their own lives they practice it. And it's going to lead to the downfall of everything.
That's the wrinkle. We're criticizing the elite. It is the elite failure who are no longer imposing their set of elitist values on others. And they have failed. The elites have failed us by allowing the black people to have children out of wedlock. That's the story that he's pushing.
The riots on the streets, the craziness. We need to have order in our society again. We need to make sure that their Christian values, whatever it is, it really is full circle to the early 80s, late 70s.
Well, that's what the reactionary. That's what reactionaries do. They sort of dress up the existing social structures and hierarchies, and present them as something new and rebellious. And if you are not maintaining those, then you are failing on a moral level. That way he gets to criticize the elite. I'm a class traitor because I am mad at my elite class for not upholding these elite values and continuing to subjugate people in the way that I think they should be.
Just like Donald Trump.
Exactly. Well, Trump is trying to maintain it. Here is Alex Azar. We didn't get into it too much with Sarah Posner today, but Alex Azar is sort of like ground zero of the religious freedom. That HHS has become so part and parcel, so religious in its practices, so many opportunities there to maintain religious freedom, for people who prescribe drugs, for doctors, for hospitals, and insurance programs. So much of that is ground zero for that, that they're almost really busy and can't really get to doing things like trying to provide support for COVID testing, which is so crucial. I mean, where I'm at here, they do a test once a week. They have one testing day. They can only do 50 people. It takes 2 or 3 days to turn around. So, I mean, if you need a test the day after they've administered the test, you got maybe a 7, 8, 9 day waiting period if you're lucky till you get the results back. That is what is known as useless. Useless. Now, granted, a little sparse where I'm at right now, but nevertheless, here's Alex Azar.
Senate Democrats released a letter this week, and I've also heard the same from Senate Republicans, that they say you, in particular at HHS, are sitting on some of that money. In fact, Senate Democrats in a letter this week said that the $25 billion that was provided in April for testing and tracing, less than half has actually been obligated. Why is the federal government sitting on it?
Well, we've got $2 billion of money that's being devoted towards developing the next generation diagnostics. You know, we'd love to get to the point that we have a rapid point of care diagnostic that is readily available, easily produced, and low cost. So we're doing that at the NIH. We have $11 billion that we have pumped out to the states that they are not yet using. You know, our public health labs are running at 58% of their capacity, even though we have the supplies to support them fully. We've got to get full shift work into those so we increase the capacities there.
And you have no power over the states or labs to do that?
Well, we're certainly talking to the governors and telling them they've got to use this money to get up and running and get that happening. We've made available, we're meeting every need they've got for supplies, for testing. But at the end of the day, our governors have to take that initiative and get their public health labs fully up and running, even as we improve testing through, say, our commercial labs. You know, just this last week, we've approved now pooled testing at the commercial labs that enables 4 or 5 tests to be run in a single test, so it expands capacity dramatically. But the most important thing we've got to do right now is each of us act responsibly as individuals, wear our face coverings, practice social distancing, use good personal hygiene. We know this works if we just will do this as individuals.
Somebody should let Charlie Kirk know that we know this works. But the idea that it's just laziness on behalf of governors, and that's why, I mean, in one moment he's saying like we're providing all the resources they need. Well, then what's the problem?
Right. And they're 58% capacity right now. What is the problem? Is it a communication line?
Well, I think they're at 58% capacity, but the fact is that they don't have the they don't have the materials because there's simply a shortage of these materials that they need to process these things quickly. They don't have experienced technicians to be able to do this. And this is where you need to invoke the Defense Production Act. This is where you need to basically throw a bunch of money at hiring, training technicians or retraining them and positioning them from other labs that are doing other work at this point.
That's what the private sector is doing. Didn't you hear him?
Well, the private sector is now what they're doing is they're pooling samples. So in other words, you go in, instead of them testing your blood, what they do is they test your blood with like half a dozen other people who tested on that day. And they see, that way they can take a larger sample, do one test. And why are they doing that? Because they don't have enough capacity in terms of, like, you wouldn't need to pool the stuff if you had the capacity.
Right.
You don't have the technicians. You don't have like the subsidiary supplies, like, I don't know, reagents or whatever it is. And so you do it on one sample instead of 6 samples. And if you find COVID in that, you contact all 6 and you say, we need to retest you 6. And maybe they do it in much larger ones. But they should also be doing this like
bonkers.
It's crazy. It's crazy. If the federal government got involved, they also could be doing this with feces. Really? And they could be doing it with feces. I mean, in some ways, that's how they've discovered that the earlier dates for the presence of coronavirus in Europe and in Europe was to go back and check samples from the sewers at that time.
Yosemite too, at the national parks.
From the sewers?
Yeah, because it's in fecal matter.
Wow.
Calling from an 812 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Oh, wait. I guess I didn't hit the button. 812.
Yeah, hi, Sam, can you hear me? This is Quinn from Indianapolis.
Quinn from Indianapolis. What's on your mind?
Actually, I was just reflecting a little bit about your interview today. About 3 years ago, I was still active in the Evangelical Church, and one of the first things that motivated my political awakening, I would say, is I was playing in the worship band, and Mike Pence was in the audience at the church. And it really just made me think a lot about where I was and why I felt like I disagreed with some of the people I was around. But I share that also to say, too, that about 18 months ago, I started listening to the Majority Report. And when I first watched, I thought that you were liberal, and I thought Michael was too liberal. That was the way I understood things, and I've been listening to you guys ever since. And obviously, I wouldn't use those terms to describe anyone on the show now. But one of the reasons why I was able to stick around and keep watching Majority Report was because Michael's humor was just so captivating, like Nation of Islam Obama and Right Wing Mandela, and just the general. He was really good at making light of the things that were worth making light of. But then, over time, I was, started to see he had real political, really great analysis and good shots and really great interviews. And I was a patron of TMBS, still am, and Majority Report and Michael, his work everywhere that he's done it, including Jacobin too, has been so valuable for me. You all were the reason why I got involved with Bernie campaign work, and I ended up going on 4 different Bernie journeys. I flew out to Las Vegas for 4 days and got to see the win in Nevada, and I also joined DSA, and I'm getting active locally. And so I just wanted to share how important and influential you all have been, and I also just wanted to memorialize Michael. And it's been a hard week, I'm sure, for anyone that listens, and I can't imagine what it's been like for you all, but you played a big role in my life and so many people, and especially Michael. He's going to be sorely missed, but I'm carrying that flame as much as I can. So,
well,
appreciate you all so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it, Quinn. We've gotten a lot of emails that were strikingly similar. So many emails that reference, that exact thing, that Michael's humor drew people in. And then it changed their political perspective on things. So many emails like that. I can't even tell you.
Evangelical, that's amazing. I'd love to see how, what was the connecting tissue there?
I would guess, just from talking to folks in the past, and maybe Quinn could call back in another time to sort of lay that out for us. But I think it's just a series of things where you start to feel a little cognitive dissonance. Why is everybody so excited about this and I'm not? And I think, I could see how Mike Pence is in the audience and everybody's getting excited. And if you're not feeling that, you're going to be like, I don't know. I once had a situation like that when I went to a sing-along bar. I was on a date.
I love this story. This should be like a patron-only story.
Wait, I want to hear it. Wait, it was a date? You went to a
it was a first date. It was a
that's horrible. It was
a first date, and I've since actually I'm friendly with the woman now, but we went on a date. She took me to a
cabaret bar,
a cabaret bar. I had never been. I didn't know. It's a bar. Okay, I'll go to the bar. And this is back, my my younger acting days. All it really took was bar. Okay, and I was in the bar, and I can't remember all the details. I just remember at one point the piano player started singing "Walking in Memphis," and everybody in the bar knew the words to the song. And I was like, I am totally lost. And I went out and I started dry heaving on the sidewalk. I was having a nervous breakdown. Yeah, it wasn't, I just felt so I can't, if this is the world, then there's something wrong with me.
Sounds like you were very paranoid.
Yeah, that's like the version of David Foster Wallace on 9/11, but it was Walking in Memphis.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was, I was a little bit more brooding back in my my youthful days, and that.
But
was
if it was The Replacements, it would have been a different story.
Yeah, of course.
Tim or something.
Yeah, I was just how can there be a room full of people singing the song?
It's the perfect song for that moment too. like a piano, like a cabaret bar with a bunch of people singing "Walking in Memphis." presumably not in Memphis.
Oh, you know what? I should say, yeah, I was high too. I was high.
Oh, that's why I said, sounds like you're a little paranoid.
Yeah, no, I was high. But you know, it was like, I guess I was too high, and that's what it was. Yeah, we must have gotten high at one point in the, yeah. And then I think we ended up going back to her place, and I got the, I think I had to leave because it was too hot in her apartment. And I was freaking out.
It's really a shame I don't feel confident doing the Sam voice in behalf of Michael for this.
Yes, exactly. I'm glad that nobody does, because that really invites it.
I have like a similar weird one. I was in Greece last year or 2 years ago, and my friend is American, but Greek American, was living there, and he loves karaoke. And like I went to school with him, college with him, and he's always been a big karaoke guy where like everybody cheers him because he does like a theater show. So we were there doing karaoke, and someone got up and did the Friends song, like Friends, the show. This is like 2 years ago. And the entire karaoke bar, everybody, every Greek person is singing at the top of their lungs, kissing each other. And my friend and I are looking at each other like, what the fuck is going on in here right now? It is, I don't know if you guys ever been to Europe and seen people in Europe, their obsession with Friends is like insane. It's disgusting. No. It's horrifying. And then they just start, they're like, what, you don't like the song? You don't like Friends? No, it was 20 years ago. Like, and we wanted to get the hell out of there. Yeah. Not high though.
Yeah. Karaoke can go one of two ways. I'm a little bit more comfortable with karaoke now. A little bit. Winnipeg Craig, just want to say for the record, Michael actually did do a lot of to cover Canadian politics. Him rolling his eyes at every request for more Canadian coverage was one of my favorite reoccurring occurrences on both shows. Train Boy, in the days after the 2016 election, I was searching for news sources of media to consume. I felt lied to by the likes of Keeping It 1600, which is the proto-Pod Save America, and politically alienated from the likes of Bill Maher and Trevor Noah. Thanks to a great series of impressions on Best of the Left, I turned into the Majority Report. Brooks was talking about the failure of Hillary's digital division and running into a founder of Google and Hillary backer, Eric Schmidt. If my memory serves, Brooks was very impressed with himself for shouting "cuck" at Eric when Brooks saw him walking out of an office building. Rest in power, Brooks. You're plotting liberators' revolutions with Sankara, Fred Hampton, and Allende. Ali else. So your comparison of a CO2 molecule to coronavirus as being a golf ball to a beach ball massively undersold the size difference. It's closer to a grain of sand in a beach ball. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Mustache report. Hey, MR crew, voting by mail, great idea during pandemic or bad idea with Trump's war against voting? Get it in early. That's what I would say. Early as possible.
In New York, just to put this in perspective, in my district, in Carolyn Maloney's district for Congress, they're suing the New York State Board of Elections because they're not counting absentee ballots properly right now. Still to this day, it's very close. It's like within 500 votes right now between the two front runners, and they're both suing because they just don't have the proper system. So get it in early. Those were late absentee ballots.
Who is it that challenged? Patel? Is that it?
Suraj Patel, like Pete Buttigieg, just to put it in perspective for folks.
Yeah.
Someone running to the right of Carolyn Maloney. What?
All right. I got time for one more call from, he's to the right of Karen Maloney?
Yeah. He's a charter school guy. I mean, she's at least pro school. She's younger though. That we have to be careful, just as a lesson to folks listening. We have to be careful of challengers. Just because they're young does not mean they're to the left of the existing. I'm not saying Carolyn Maloney is progressive, but he is actually more to the right of her.
There is a just a simple anti-establishment I guess impetus that is not necessarily always what you think it is.
And follow the money, because they might say it in their platform, oh yeah, I'm for Medicare for all, but then you see they're taking insurance company money, and it's just something to get the kids on board.
Last call of the day, calling from 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Josh from Chicago. How are you, Josh?
I'm good. I want to talk about the DSA results. They finally came in.
Okay.
But I did want to quickly mention someone posted a compilation of Michael's Chris Matthews impressions on my feed the other day, and it just made me laugh so much. And I think the thing I miss with him is empathy is actually really radical in these days of age. Kindness is radical. And I think Michael was one of the most sort of uncynical people that I knew in a way. I think he believed that we had the ability. He saw the best in people, and I think especially he saw the best in the whole world. And so that's sort of something else I thought of. But and I hope you guys are taking care and have all the self-care you need and taking the time. But I think Michael would have also been happy that the DSA swept their election in the state legislature. All four of the candidates that we ran won. Marcela Matianas won on the absentee ballots by she won a 2-1 margin on the absentee ballots. Farah Dupont Forrest, who was down by 400 votes on election day, ended up winning by 2,000 votes. And also Zoran Mamdini and Jabari Bridgeport won as well. And
Jabari's amazing. Jabari's also, OG, very, very good guy.
Really amazing. Especially because they didn't run with institutional support from WFP, at least Zoran and Farah. WFP, I think, endorsed their opponents.
No.
And then they're not DSA. They weren't endorsed, but Emily Gallagher, who's DSA member, beat Joe Lentil, and Khalil Anderson also won. I forget where he is. Numiki might know. It's in the Rock. He's in the Rockaways, but he's a state assembly. He'll be going to the state assembly. So there's, I think, about an 8-person socialist caucus now that's headed to Albany, which is really cool, I think. And it's definitely a way we can challenge Cuomo and continuing pushing him to the left and also sort of defying him. So
let's hope.
Really good news, I think, on this.
All right. Thanks for the call, Josh. I feel like New York is going to be a very different state in, 5-6 years in terms of the politics.
Yeah. I mean, the assembly, just to put this in perspective for folks who don't know, is a supermajority. So yes, great wins. Awesome. Definitely would shift the conversation. Carl Hasty's going to have a little bit of a handful to deal with. But we got to get the Senate and we got to get the city council off of real estate money, because if we really want to make the change, we got to get to the, it's got to be at the city level.
Yep. All right. I'm sorry, folks. That's it for calls today. Forgive us, please. We'll do a couple IMs, then we'll head out of here. Out of the closet, serial killer Ben Shapiro. Empathy will stop an otherwise qualified killer from doing what is absolutely necessary, and Democrats understand this. Do you think Sam Seder let empathy cloud his vision as he choked the life out of Seth Rich? Thank you.
No, because we just proved you're not spiritual enough to be empathetic.
There you go. Alex JS 485 regarding Hoyer and the Democrats. This just seems like a continuation of the move since the 70s to target suburban professionals, basically former Republicans. The target of this in most elections for Democrats are people who didn't lose their jobs or are still secured, just motivated to hate Trump. So why wouldn't he make the fight about the FBI HQ and Trump's personal benefits instead of actual aid to low income? Right. I mean, that's right. This election isn't to be fought over those people. The entire election is being made to be fought over the small sliver of white suburbanites in a few states. I mean, I think that's true.
And it's about controlling the pot. Like when people say, it's these folks who are more conservative. No, I mean, it is very clearly like it's about the special interest. That's it. Like that's it right now. Who controls who's taking the money from the special interest right now? Because when you're in the presidency, you can take a lot more money. You can get a lot more lobbying done, especially if you're controlling the Senate. So the Democratic special interests realize that they're losing out on a big pot of money right now.
Kowalski from Nebraska. Ahoy, MR crew and community. I purchased the pulse oximeter as you recommended. My results were perfect. All my symptoms are gone and I'm feeling great physically. My doctor thinks it was likely allergies, but to quarantine anyways. In reference to your interview today, I believe that the economic decline of the working class and middle class has led to the radicalization of older religious people and alienated younger people to become nihilistic or disillusioned in the system, which creates a feedback loop. Found it almost laughable to quote Christ or scripture and be called a socialist when defending the poor or migrants or the environment. These people are not a religious group. They are solely a political one that are being exploited to get lower taxes and fewer regulations and make the United States more competitive. Like that would even help them. Michael was correct that in only a large organized labor movement is going to be able to undo this neoliberal consensus, and that's strangling the planet in political discussion. Something's got to happen. I don't know if it's some form of labor movement. I think is really the only place where this is going to happen. Sam still isn't working Thursdays. I miss Michael and his voice. I'm happy you guys are continuing. I will continue to support the show no matter how many Thursdays Sam doesn't want to work. Love you all. Brock from Virginia. Michael and Virgil, Texas, are sunburned, smiling, and watching over us in their Biden boat into heaven. Virgil, Texas.
Is Virgil? I think there's it's like a Paul McCartney type of thing with Virgil being like out of the public eye recently. I don't know. Maybe Brendan knows better than me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he has the same phone number as he did before, going into his COVID bubble. So I think it's the same guy.
Get out there, Virgil.
Nick DC, is there a video of the funeral and tributes? I don't know if there is one for the public.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Anthony from Baltimore. I was lucky enough to meet the MR crew in 2017 at the Bell House. It was super surreal, and I was so nervous, but Michael put his arm around my shoulders, and while he was finishing up talking to another fan before I could chicken out and leave before talking to him, got to tell him the reason why I became such a huge fan of the Majority Report through his thorough debunking of Sam Harris. The live show actually fell on my birthday. He invited my sister and me for drinks to celebrate, but we had a train to catch to Baltimore. He was definitely an intellectual hero to me. I will miss him. I know right-wing Mandela will be missed so much by Josh's mom. Left his best. Gigi Palin, for Sam and other skeptically minded folks, if you want to start with an exploration of spirituality from the ground up, check out the Wim Hof breathing method. Spirituality is deeply personal and unique to the individual, despite what some might say, and a simple breathing exercise quickly helps you get familiar with the mind-body connection. He's also known as the Iceman and has a Vice doc. Google him.
He's crazy. He gets into freezing cold water and prepares his breathing to get into that water. It's interesting to check out. Definitely do so. I don't practice it.
Carrie Waif. The Trump boat rallies were organized across the country on July 4th. We even had one here in Pittsburgh with a counter protest, of course. Interesting. I see.
Oh, sea battle. That'd be awesome.
Trumpy Bear. If you didn't think this crap show COVID response was prophesized, just look at the name we gave the next generation a year before they all got on stuck on Zoom. The ZJ, I see.
People, I saw somebody also make the line between what we did to 9/11 first responders and how we're surprised at how we're being left out with nothing. Like how we won't compensate 9/11 first responders for all the weird cancers they got. And yeah, I mean, we are even less deserving than them, I guess, in their eyes.
Dr. Chaos MD, I want to express two things. First and foremost, I feel like I learned an immense amount of information from my time watching Michael Brooks and greatly saddened by his passing. I think the most valuable takeaway for me was to recognize contradictions within ourselves and others, be accepting of that in holistic and strategic ways. Second thing is in response to the Ben Shapiro segment from yesterday, where he promotes sociopathy in politics because empathy leads to illogical policy, social safety net or any social policy, really. As someone who struggles with empathy, I can't say that I'm in full support of a robust social safety net and downward wealth distribution. I can say that I am in full. The reason being that even as a relatively privileged person, I'm far more likely to need the social safety net at some point in my life, as opposed to becoming a millionaire, billionaire in my lifetime. All these logic lords are either being paid to be disingenuous or utilizing emotional arguments based on their feelings, i.e. hopes and aspirations of becoming rich and not wanting to pay taxes. Also, side note, the temporarily poor millionaires and billionaires are my favorite flavor of idiot. All right, 3 more of these, and then we'll go.
Good. That's very good.
Christo, I met Michael a few times in person, always just briefly, where I was more family with him than he could have ever been with me. Each time he treated me as a friend. And indeed, I feel like I've lost a good friend. Imagine we all do. Thanks to you for creating this community. The past 10 days, I was visiting family in Western Pennsylvania. Felt so foreign, lots of Trump yard signs, especially considering the bad news I received while there. I'm glad to be back in NYC, closer to my family here. Morbid symptoms. I have a hard time imagining how the country makes it through the fall. Yeah, me too. Pajama Boy, notice how Charlie Kirk in the video hasn't had a haircut in months. The dude is obeying the rules while telling people to watch him otherwise. Yes, I said that specifically. Why doesn't he have a haircut? And the final I am of the day. Do Democrats think they'll be able to say Republicans are the ones that reduced the $600 benefit without people pointing to the Democrats did nothing to stop them? I have no idea what they're thinking. Know me? Brendan, Matt, thanks, guys.
Thank
we'll see you tomorrow.
Treat yourself well.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want. But I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick